Ivana's the type of a girl that puts on her makeup, puts on another couture dress, and she's off and running. She's a star.
I don't think she has a really bad quality. I mean, I'm not saying that to be nice to her. She can be annoying on occasion, but that's also that sense of energy that she's got.
She's bold, she's daring, she's not overly conservative. She doesn't allow it to get boring.
My editor then said at the Daily News, if this isn't a tabloid story, I never saw one. He said, this is the tabloid story to end all tabloid stories.
Ivana Trump is a survivor. I always say that she survived Stalinism and Trumpism, so you have to hand it to her.
In the late 1940s, Europe was still recovering from the ravages of World War II, when Czechoslovakia was taken over by communist forces. Inside this new Soviet satellite was the small town of Zlín, called Gottwaldov by the communists. The village was dominated by the belching smokestacks of the Bata shoe factory. Among those employed at the Bata factory was Milos Zelníček, a civil engineer. He and his wife Maria, a part-time telephone operator, also made their home in Zlín. On February 20th, 1949, the couple welcomed their first and only child. The baby, named Ivana, showed a strong will to survive right from the start.
Ivana was premature. I was just 7 months pregnant, and she had to stay in the hospital for a long time, in an incubator. Ivana was small, only weighed 3 pounds, but she was very strong and healthy and out of danger.
Ivana was finally released from the hospital when she was 6 months old. She was taken home to one of the 2-story houses built by the Bata Shoe Company. Each house was divided for 2 families.
A 4-room house, essentially, half a house. But flat roof, just drab. I mean, not a slum. I mean, everything's, clean and kind of orderly, but just dreary and drab and kind of grim.
Their town may have been cold and colorless, but the Zelníčeks were a warm, close-knit family, well off by communist standards. Ivana was doted on and given every advantage. She adored her parents and expressed her affection in one Mother's Day card.
To Mom, my precious Mom, what can I give to you when I do not earn money? I can only draw a bouquet for you. This bouquet will be so colorful, my dear Mom. You are my whole world. Yours, Ivana.
Ivana was also close to her paternal grandmother, an early role model. She worked as a high-ranking executive at the Bata Shoe Factory, while her husband took care of things at home.
At that time, it was very unusual. Now it is still quite unusual. But I think that any kind of business instincts which I have, I think came probably from my grandma.
Ivana demonstrated from an early age that she had the qualities it would take to make something of herself. She was bright, clever, and a good student. She also had a delicate beauty that won her some modeling jobs and brought her to the attention of movie producers. She was cast in several Czech films as a child. Although she was sometimes compared to Shirley Temple, movies would not be what Ivana was best known for. Her father introduced her to sports at a very early age. He had been a champion swimmer and was head of the local ski club.
He knew all the sports. He wanted Ivana to be a boy when Ivana was born. She did all the sports as if she was a boy. My husband was always with her.
Ivana showed that she'd inherited her father's talent when she won her first ski race at the age of 6. Her first place prize was an orange. Soon, she was training to become an elite, all-around athlete.
The drive and competitiveness and discipline that Ivana showed at a very young age in sports, in both swimming and skiing, was very much part of what she is. Gave her this will, this drive to succeed, this iron will, if you will. She was a little iron-willed girl behind the Iron Curtain there, trying to figure out a way out and up.
By the age of 12, Ivana had no time in her schedule for 2 sports. She chose to concentrate on skiing. But it wasn't long before she was spending more hours on the slopes than on her schoolwork. Her grades suffered. Ivana's father decided it was time to show her what life might be like if she failed to finish her education. He sent her off to work at the Bata shoe factory.
My father sent me to a shoe factory in my town and put me on assembly line. Well, it was awful. And I lasted on the job probably for about 14 days. I came home and I said, over the dead body, I'm going to do this one ever again.
Ivana went back to school and got straight A's without sacrificing her skiing. At the age of 15, she was on the Czech junior national ski team and began traveling to glamorous ski resorts in countries outside the communist bloc. It was an awakening for her.
She just couldn't believe the amount of things in the shops, and what particularly struck her were the fresh fruits and vegetables. She said she'd never seen a banana before in her life, and that was the first time she saw a banana. It kind of blew her mind that there was so much on the other side of the Iron Curtain. Such abundance and variety and color and wealth.
Ivana's sport also provided her first real romance. She began dating 18-year-old Czech skier George Sirovatka. The two spent time off from school and training at the country cottage owned by Ivana's parents.
We would go up there and spend a weekend or spend a couple of days and just have fun and go around, go swimming. And Ivana had a little motorcycle. We would ride her motorcycle and just enjoy ourselves away from the city. In a sense, was probably one of the best times of our lives as well, when we were young and students and had all this fun.
Ivana had grown into a stunning young woman, and her good looks, vibrant personality, and talent for downhill racing made her a natural cover girl for skiing magazines. She enjoyed her special privileges as a member of the junior national ski team, travel, and financial assistance. But success in sports did not guarantee personal freedom. The government was always on the watch for defections.
I know the communists that were watching everybody, and I always had one of them behind my back, and they were, believe me, these police officers, they were very good skiers, but they still could not outski me, that's for sure.
Although Ivana never tried to defect, she had to face more scrutiny when she returned home from a meet.
She and all the members of the team were separately interrogated by the secret police as to what they saw, who they saw, what the other members of the team did. You had to really learn how to negotiate this sort of atmosphere. You had to learn how to be manipulative in a way, and secretive, and cautious, very, very cautious.
In 1967, Ivana left her hometown for Prague, Czechoslovakia's capital city. There, she attended Charles University, concentrating on physical education. She also became a member of the highly regarded university ski team. Ivana always set high standards as a scholar and as an athlete.
She realized if you really want to do something well, you have to do it perfect. And if you are a skier and downhill skier and competition, your judgment has to be perfect. Otherwise, you can get injured. I think that carried with her into her life, that her judgment was perfect always.
The industrious Ivana also earned extra money while attending school by working as a model. It was an exciting time for her to be in Prague during what became known as the Prague Spring. A more liberal government had come to power that breathed new life into the city after years of harsh Soviet repression. People felt free to speak their minds, and Prague was booming with cafes, jazz clubs, and bars that stayed open all night. But it would not last for long. In early August of 1968, Russian tanks rolled into Prague to crush what Moscow saw as a threat to Czechoslovakia's communist society. Ivana was in Germany at the time of the invasion, but did not use the opportunity to defect. She was afraid she would never see her parents again and fearful of what might happen to them.
The communists, they would take a revenge on the families staying back in the country. Parents would lose good jobs and stuff like that. So Ivana didn't want that to happen.
Ivana also wanted to finish her education and earned her master's degree in 1972. She wanted to go to the West, But the only way to leave without being branded a defector was to marry a foreigner. It was arranged for Ivana to marry Alfred Winklmayr, a member of the Austrian ski team.
This way she was able to get an Austrian citizenship and passport, and after she finished the university she was able to freely leave the country, and her parents were not affected, and she was able to travel back and forth.
Ivana was supposed to follow her friend George to Canada, where she also had family. But before she left Prague, she fell in love with a charismatic Czech poet, songwriter, and playboy named Jiří Steidl. They became inseparable.
One of his friends said, Jiří wasn't the best-looking guy in Prague, but he was one of the brightest. And the fact that Ivana was not only his girlfriend, but his kind of muse, shows that she wasn't just some silly little girl. You know, she had something, and she had a head on her shoulders.
But the romance was doomed. In October of 1973, Jiří Steidl was fatally injured in a car crash. Ivana was devastated. She left Czechoslovakia within weeks of Steidl's death.
I really could not stay around because it was just too painful to go to the same places when we were together. And it was the time to leave. And it was probably the perfect time to leave. So I went to my aunt and uncle in Canada.
Ivana Zelnícková Winklmayr arrived in Canada in the fall of 1973. It wouldn't be long before she had the new world in the palm of her hand. In 1973, Ivana Zelnícková Winklmayr emigrated from Czechoslovakia to Canada. She settled in Montreal and ended the marriage of convenience that had allowed her to travel freely outside the communist bloc. She took courses to improve her English, and to make ends meet, she took modeling assignments. Ivana's work ethic impressed her agents.
People I talked to at the modeling agency said that Ivana was extremely disciplined, very professional, always on time, early, if anything, never missed a job, never left a client unhappy. A really good model, everything you'd want in a model. Not a prima donna.
Ivana did not forget her parents either. She immediately started sending them airline tickets to visit her on holidays.
You know, she would send them money. You know, a little bit of dollars that time made miracles in Czechoslovakia, so it was a way of supporting, paying back for, you know, the support they gave her.
It wasn't long before Ivana was setting the runways on fire. She became a favorite model of some of Canada's top fur companies, reportedly earning up to $50,000 a year. She also seemed content in her personal life, living with childhood sweetheart George Sirabatka. Then, in 1976, her agency sent her to New York to promote the Montreal Olympics. And there, at an East Side restaurant called Maxwell's Plum, a young man approached Ivana and some of her friends. His name was Donald Trump.
So I look back at the girls, my friends, and I said, I have a good news and I have a bad news. Now, good news that we're going to get a table real fast. The bad news, this gentleman is definitely going to go and want to sit with us. They say, Ivana, take the table. So I did. And that was the beginning of my story with Donald Trump.
Donald Trump was, in fact, one of the most eligible bachelors in New York. But he was not yet the larger-than-life figure he would become. He was well-educated, good-looking, and was the son of one of the city's most successful builders. Donald was always surrounded by beautiful women, but he found something special in Ivana.
Ivana had a great beauty, but she also had a spark. And she had an energy, a vitality that very few people have. And it was just something that got my attention.
Ivana knew she had fallen for Trump. And back in Canada, she broke off her relationship with George Sirabatka, but they remained friends.
We were friends since so early childhood, and we went through, you know, incredible times and stories and all the, you know, the excitement on those years, which you never forget. So we partied in a good way, and she went to New York, and we always stayed in touch.
Just before Christmas of 1976, Donald asked Ivana to pick a spot for a vacation. She chose a place where she was in her element, Aspen, Colorado. At first, Ivana tried to hide the fact that she was an expert skier.
And Donald didn't know that Ivana was a great skier. And Donald had never been on skis before, so every day he'd take his lessons and everything. And finally, by the end of the week, he saw Ivana zigzagging, down the mountain. He was madly in love with her. I mean, she was a real challenge.
Donald proposed marriage in Aspen, and Ivana accepted. Trump called his mother in Queens to let her in on the plans.
I knew he was senior. They came out here, and we had a cup of tea. And that was when they announced that they would like to get married. And they had our blessing, of course. They had our blessing. Ivana was a nice girl.
On April 9th, 1977, Ivana and Donald Trump were married at the Marble Collegiate Church in New York. And after their honeymoon, the couple moved from Donald's bachelor pad to an apartment in the Olympic Tower on Fifth Avenue. Ivana now had to adjust to living in a strange new city.
I didn't know anybody, and I had to adjust quite a bit. I could not get from the Fifth Avenue to Madison Avenue if my life would depend on it.
But Ivana was also something of a mystery to the social set she had married into.
People couldn't quite figure her out. I think they just assumed at first that she was a dumb blonde who had married a rich man. They were wrong about that.
The fact was that if Donald Trump was determined to be Manhattan's most powerful force in real estate, Ivana was going to make it her business to be the best corporate wife in the city. She apparently had what it took.
She was somebody that had great organizational skills. And that's always very nice to have as a wife, because I can tell you many wives that I know, married to people that I know very well, where the woman is not organized, it really has a negative impact on the husband.
On December 31st, 1977, Ivana gave birth to her first child, Donald Trump Jr. Then her husband unveiled his plans for what would be his debut as a builder in Manhattan. The old Commodore Hotel at 42nd Street near Grand Central Station would be gutted. And in its place, Trump would create the new Grand Hyatt Hotel. Even Trump's father thought the plan foolhardy given the rundown location, but Ivana backed her husband.
What I gave to Donald was maybe a little confidence in himself, because we are very young and you have to take certain risks. And if you don't take them when you're young, you're surely not going to go and take them when you're 60 years old.
It wasn't long before both of the Trumps were working together on the Grand Hyatt. Donald Trump enlisted his wife's help in the decoration of the hotel's interior. She tackled the job with her customary zeal.
She certainly wasn't one of those trophy wives who just do charity stuff and go to lunches and things. Ivana was working, and she has always worked, like a dray horse. I mean, she's unbelievably energetic.
The Hyatt was a proving ground for Ivana. She was cutting her teeth as a boss in a tough business, spending long hours dealing with an army of decorators and construction workers. And she was not shy about demanding that they all meet her high standards.
Ivana's a very tough kind of a boss. She gets very emotional. She gets very carried away. And sometimes you think over the top, but the fact is she gets the job done, and she's very tough, but she's very fair. And ultimately, people learn to respect her and like her. That's not necessarily true at the beginning. At the beginning, they revolt.
Donald reportedly was so delighted with the job Ivana had done that he made her vice president in charge of interior design for the Trump organization. It was just the beginning of a personal and professional partnership that would come to define the 80s, a decade that produced a host of new billionaires.
One of the reasons why the Trumps were so much a couple of the 80s is that they both were working. They were a team working together. I mean, he was a self-made man with his working wife, It's a very modern story. They weren't two aristocrats. Also, Donald made his money in a way people could see. He built things you could see. He wasn't a behind-the-scenes financier, And she was there working beside him, and that was very modern, very much of this time.
But even though the Trumps were both immersed in multi-million-dollar projects, they also remained family-oriented. On October 30th, 1981, they welcomed a daughter, Ivanka. A little more than a year later, work was completed on the Trumps' most ambitious and costly project, the Trump Tower on Fifth Avenue. Ivana supervised all the interior decor for the imposing structure of gold and glass. When it opened in 1983, a New York Times critic called the outcome a pleasant surprise. The high-gloss look of the tower would become a signature style for Trump buildings.
Ivana had a great eye, a great sense of taste, as she always has, and she loved fountains. She put fountains everywhere. I mean, she bought a whole entire mountain for the marble. I mean, she went right to the source and did everything herself. I mean, she rolled up her sleeves. She always did it in high heels, but she made sure she did it.
Ivana and Donald now called an opulent 50-room triplex at the top of the Trump Tower home. The apartment, with walls of mirrors and hung with crystal, was like a skyscraper version of Versailles. It was valued at more than $10 million. Throughout the 80s, the Trumps would rule as New York's most conspicuously wealthy couple. But like other past empires, the age of the Trumps would not last. By the early 1980s, Ivana Trump was the wife of real estate dynamo Donald Trump and the mother of 2 children. She had also entered the business world in a big way as vice president for decorating for the Trump Organization. She'd made a splash with her work on the Trump Tower, and she and her husband had a lifestyle that flaunted their wealth.
They had a lot of money, and they made everybody know they had a lot of money. They were their own best press agents. They weren't, laid back, kind of quiet, courtly, social, old money kind of people.
But in 1982, the Trumps bought a large piece of some very old money property, a $4 million home on the water in Greenwich, Connecticut. Ivana turned it into a showcase that rivaled some of the stateliest homes in Europe. Then, in 1985, Donald Trump acquired the most prestigious property in Palm Beach, Florida, Mar-a-Lago. The luxurious Spanish-style house, built in the 20s, had fallen into disrepair. But Ivana restored the estate to its original glory. The Trumps were living like modern royalty, complete with palaces and a large staff of attendants. They now owned the world's biggest yacht called the Princess. Even Ivana's own special name for her husband had a regal sound. The English translation of his name from Czech was the Donald.
It was like a title almost, the Marquis or the Count. It was funny, and we remember things that are funny.
And I learned from the Donald to say, I know that it can be done, just try.
And I think she stood out because of this accent and this way of speaking. It was memorable. She was someone who was easy to imitate, easy to quote.
Ivana was not only becoming the darling of the media, she was now one of the most photographed women in the world. She was the pinup girl for having it all. As an international celebrity, she had front row seats at the Paris fashion shows and spent thousands of dollars on couture clothes. Her father Milos often joined her on her European shopping sprees. Ivana enjoyed keeping the gossips guessing about who he was.
She always told me that she'd love to go with my grandfather to Paris. He was extremely handsome and, thin and great dancer, so she loved bringing him to Paris. It looked like, the gorgeous older guy on the side. My dad would get probably a lot of phone calls the next day in the office asking who the man on her arm was.
In fact, everything Ivana did drew attention. The paparazzi followed her from glittering East Coast charity balls to exclusive ski resorts. Neither of the Trumps ever avoided the spotlight.
I've never met anyone quite as addicted to publicity as Ivana and Donald Trump. I think one of the things they had in common was they both loved publicity. They both loved the limelight.
By the mid-'80s, the Trump name was everywhere, and not only on buildings. There was now an airline, a fleet of helicopters. The Trump name also began to loom over the boardwalk in Atlantic City. Donald Trump had moved full force into the world of casinos. When it came to one key management spot, he decided once again to keep it in the family. He tapped Ivana to be CEO of the Trump Castle and Casino, one of his first ventures in the gambling business.
I felt it was like the biggest mom and pop operation in the world. and she wanted to prove herself to him that she wasn't just Mrs. Donald Trump, that she knew what she was doing, and she strove to be the best business person that she could be, and Ivana loved it.
As soon as she arrived, it was clear to the staff of the Trump castle that Ivana had a mania for detail.
You'd see people lined up like this, and they'd be standing there, and one would hand her papers to look at, checks to sign, another person was showing her wood samples, another person was showing her things for the casino, and she would go through this place with a fine-tooth comb.
She was not always tactful in her criticism of those who fell short of her demand for perfection.
Ivana speaks with a very, very strong will. I've seen men sink to their knees when she finished with them.
Still, she was convinced that her all-consuming management style was justified.
It's like running a small country. I was not tough, I was strong. I had to be, because you cannot be a pussycat running, the casino with 4,500 employees.
During Ivana's reign at the Trump Castle, it became one of the most profitable casinos in the world. It was a favorite haunt of high rollers who were lured in by the lavish parties Ivana threw for them.
She would dance with every one of those guys with the cigars and the chains, and schmooze them and convince them to get downstairs and go gamble. She was great at it.
Her responsibilities at the casino required her to be in Atlantic City several days a week. And she continued to work at breakneck speed even after she gave birth to her third child, a son named Eric. Ivana, now 35, always insisted that for her, family came first.
My mother did work extremely hard for actually as long as I can remember, but she was with us when we needed her to be with us. She went to our dance performances and our plays, but at the same time, she lived out her own dream.
But her obsession with work and the separation it required was beginning to wear on Ivana's marriage.
You want to come home to a wife, you don't want to come home to an executive. And it got to be where really Ivana was an executive, and I started thinking of her as an executive, and that was not a good thing for the relationship.
Still, Donald Trump never did ask his most trusted colleague to take on the job of full-time wife. And Ivana never saw herself as a threat to her husband's ego.
Donald told me once, he said, there can be only one star in a family. And guess what? I really didn't mind that Donald would be a star.
Then, in 1987, Donald Trump put Ivana in charge of another prized property that would only intensify the spotlight on her. He'd bought the Plaza, the landmark hotel at the edge of New York's Central Park. It had become a faded remnant of an age of grace and elegance. Ivana's mission was to restore its grandeur. She was the ideal choice for the job.
I mean, she had bought more chandeliers and chairs and decorated more rooms and put more beds into more places than any person I've ever seen in my life.
But even for a workaholic, there were limits. When she accepted the assignment as president of the Plaza, Ivana had to give up her post at Trump Castle in Atlantic City. Whatever conflicts she may have had with her staff, at the end of her 2-year tour of duty at the casino, the general took the salute of her troops.
The employees lined up 6, 7 deep to make an alley for her to walk out through, and the cheering and the clapping and the hooting. I mean, it was a very touching scene, and everybody was sad to see her go.
Ivana left Atlantic City behind. She would now embark on her next great business adventure, but also face the stormiest period of her life. In 1987, Ivana Trump was the unrivaled queen of the New York social and business world. At the age of 38, she also became president of the fabled Plaza Hotel, accepting a unique deal from her husband, Donald.
I told her that I was going to pay her $1 a year and all the dresses she can buy. But really, if you knew how many dresses she bought, it wasn't such a good deal for me.
But anyone who thought Ivana would be a figurehead boss was very mistaken. She hovered over operations at the Plaza with the same intensity that she'd brought to her other assignments.
Always was very successful, also we want to keep it.
Nor did her workday end when she went home to her sumptuous penthouse a few blocks away.
Ivana used to sit upstairs in Trump Tower in her apartment with the binoculars, and if she saw papers and garbage, but she was on the phone, I see garbage flying around out front, I see luggage sitting there too long, I see cars double and triple parked, and that attention to everything kept everybody on their feet.
Yet Ivana's insistence on cleanliness and quality at the plaza was appreciated by the career professionals at the hotel. They saw Ivana as someone who was rescuing the hotel from decay and restoring its pride.
Ivana brought back the charm that the hotel needed. I said she brought back the woman's touch that the hotel needed and the glamour that the hotel needed. And she many times preached to us, the guest is always right and it's their home and we got to treat them as such.
For her efforts in renovating the plaza and managing its staff of 1,400, Ivana was chosen by her peers as Hotelier of the Year for 1989. But all the recognition may have put more pressure on her relationship with Donald.
I think one of the problems in the marriage of Ivana and Donald was that she started getting a little too much publicity for his liking.
Ivana had now spent more than a decade beautifying Trump properties. And as she was about to turn 40, she'd spruced up her own appearance. A California plastic surgeon skillfully transformed Ivana into a more dazzling and youthful version of herself. But her physical changes may have been a sign of troubles within the Trump household that had not yet reached the surface.
It's a very common thing, as a matter of fact, in marriage today for women to go to their plastic surgeons before they go to their divorce lawyers.
In fact, the Trump marriage was reaching a crisis point. Word had gotten out that Donald Trump was allegedly keeping a mistress at a Midtown hotel. Ivana was questioned about the story by columnist Cindy Adams.
I remember speaking to her one day at the Waldorf, and I said, "Is it true that he's having an affair?" And she says, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "Why don't you just watch yourself?"
The other woman everyone was talking about turned out to be Marla Maples, a 32-year-old former beauty queen and aspiring actress. Her alleged relationship with Donald Trump came out in the open when the Trump family went to Aspen for Christmas in 1989. Ivana was confronted by Marla Maples, who told her point blank that she wanted Donald. Ivana went to her husband in an attempt to save her marriage. But when Ivana pressed, he reportedly delivered an ultimatum.
He had told her he wanted to be free. He said the only condition under which he would stay married was if she would agree that he should see other women. And she said, I couldn't stay married under those terms.
Back in New York, Ivana finally decided that her friend, columnist Liz Smith, should break the story. And the war of the Trumps was on. The most publicized marriage of the 80s exploded in the harshest public light.
I remember my editor then said at the Daily News, if this isn't a tabloid story, I never saw one. He said, this is the tabloid story to end all tabloid stories.
Over a 3-month period, the press headlined every sordid detail of the Marla affair. Then came the bulletins that Ivana was asking for half of Donald's estimated $5 billion fortune. Trump was insisting on enforcing Ivana's pre- and post-nuptial agreements. In the midst of the battles, it appeared that Donald was trying to get the upper hand by downplaying Ivana's contributions to the success of Trump Enterprises.
And he also denigrated the work she had done at the Plaza, saying that he could have hired any great Swiss hotel manager to do as well as she did. And he kept insisting that she would have to live by their prenup agreement. She wanted more.
The real-life soap opera was a goldmine for the media. It had television ratings on the rise and newspapers flying off the stands. Throughout the run of the media circus, Ivana kept a stoic front while carrying out her duties at the Plaza.
She still continued to manage the hotel, and she handled it very professionally. She never let her personal life interfere with the business. And she had kept her sense of humor. I thought that showed a lot of courage to do that.
The one thing Ivana and Donald agreed on throughout the long, drawn-out divorce proceedings was the importance of their children's welfare. The Trumps made every effort to shield them from the media frenzy whirling around the family.
They knew the importance of keeping us separate from, details we didn't need to or shouldn't have known at a young age. So both my parents were very good in keeping us removed from that. And I think that's one of the things that I think we're all most grateful for.
But in October of 1990, as the legal hassles over a settlement wore on, Ivana received devastating news from Czechoslovakia. Her beloved father, Miloš, had died suddenly from a heart attack at the age of 63. Ivana was inconsolable. The entire family gathered in her old hometown of Zlín for the burial, including Donald.
He put his arm around Ivana. The 3 children were with them. And after that scene at the funeral there and the burial, they decided they were going to get divorced, but they were going to do it amicably, and they were going to, for the sake of their children and for the love that they had shared, do the right thing.
By December 11th, 1990, a final settlement was reached. And although the Trumps won't talk about the divorce, Ivana made out just fine. She would get the estate in Connecticut and $14 million. Ivana had survived the darkest period in her life, and she was now ready to move on.
Ivana decided she would survive. I mean, she had some deep, Czechoslovakian fabulous survivor instinct. She wasn't going to be vanquished by Donald.
She'd next have to reestablish herself as one of the most powerful businesswomen in the country. But now, Ivana would have to do it all on her own. In 1991, Ivana Trump was in a period of enormous changes in her life. She had divorced Donald Trump and was no longer the overseer of the Trump empire. That meant she had to relinquish the presidency of the Plaza Hotel. It was a sad parting.
I seen people crying when Ivana left the Plaza, included myself actually. And as far as a hotelier is concerned, she was the princess of the hotels.
Ivana was offered top positions at other hotels and casinos, but the only job she accepted was from the soap opera One Life to Live. She had a cameo role as a casino operator.
I want this place to look just spectacular. Henry, did the new drapers arrive? That's Ivana Trump.
But what Ivana wanted was a complete break from the past.
Action, go!
Although she and Donald did get together briefly to film a Pizza Hut commercial.
It's wrong, isn't it?
But it feels so right.
Then it's a deal?
Yes, we eat our pizza the wrong way.
The Trumps may have clicked on camera, but in real life, Ivana had another man at her side. She'd been dating Italian businessman Riccardo Mazzucchelli. They first met in England at the fashionable Ascot races and married in 1995.
When she first met Riccardo, he came on very strong, and he was charming and attractive, and he liked to ski, he liked to go on the boat, and that was a very important part of Ivana's life.
But for Ivana, work was equally important. For a start, she signed on with the William Morris Agency to restructure her career.
She has great imagination. She thinks ahead. If there's something that she becomes interested in, you know that she put a lot of thought into it, and that it would turn out to be a successful venture no matter what it is with her.
In 1992, the agency negotiated $1 million book deal for her. Ivana co-wrote her first novel, For Love Alone, a thinly veiled account of her own life. It sold more than 250,000 copies and made the New York Times bestseller list. Then, in 1993, the newly minted author set her sights on another medium, television. She signed a contract with the Home Shopping Network, and in her first outing, she set a sales record with a very pricey suit.
It did about $74,000 a minute in sales, and it was a $300 suit, and everybody thought there's no way that you can sell a $300 suit on television, and it sold out in minutes.
Ivana next moved on to other products like costume jewelry. She was the super shop girl of the technology age. Her status as a social icon enhanced her ability to sell everything from milk to haute couture. Her personal style made her a muse for top fashion designer Thierry Mugler.
She's like a living statue and very inspiring to design for. She represents, this type of strong and successful woman. She definitely is a very good image for us.
When Ivana's daughter Ivanka showed an interest in modeling, Thierry Mugler was the first to hire her. Soon, Ivanka's career was taking off. And she wasn't the only one of the Trump children who went to work. Ivana wanted her children to know the value of a dollar, and Donald Jr. and Eric earned pocket money with summer jobs on construction sites with their father.
They have a good work ethic. I believe some of them will come into my business. She wants them to come into my business. I don't know that they will, but they have the potential. And I think the respect that they have for their mother is going to be a vital ingredient.
But when it came to making money, Ivana was a tough act for anyone to follow. By 1997, she'd turned out her third book, developed a perfume and a line of cosmetics that includes 68 beauty products. And the woman who was once the object of tabloid stories was now writing an advice column for the weekly tabloid, The Globe. But Ivana, now in her late 40s, still hadn't found her own answer to the lasting success she longed for in her personal life. She divorced Riccardo Mazzucchelli in 1997 after less than 2 years of marriage.
They were friends. They had a lot of mutual friends in common. Ivana has a European mentality. She prefers being with a European, but he really wasn't a strong enough match for Ivana. She needs somebody that's more dynamic than he was.
And it wasn't long before she found that man. Count Goffredo Gaetani d'Aragona, president of the Ferrari Motor Company of New England, is now the love of Ivana's life.
They have a spectacular relationship. I see a great sense of security, confidence, and peace of mind that she has with Goffredo. He's really made Ivana younger, happier, and more in touch with herself than ever before.
Today, Ivana divides her time between her New York townhouse and her own magnificent oceanfront villa in Palm Beach called Concha Marina. She travels the world on business and for her own pleasure. She seems to be living out the advice she gave to other divorcees in the 1996 movie First Wives Club.
And remember, what? Don't get mad. Get everything. Bye-bye. Bye now.
Recently, Ivana and Donald Trump appeared together again. The occasion was the unveiling of their wax images at the new Madame Tussauds Wax Museum in New York. No longer Mrs. Trump, Ivana Trump has proven she can stand on her own.
And that's the amazing story of Ivana, is how she doesn't have to take her cues from anybody anymore. Maybe now she's found out she just has to be Ivana, and that's good enough.
She's done what she's had to do to get ahead, but I don't think she's really stepped on people. I think it's more a matter of wiggling her way through these systems, you know. She had to survive communism. She had to survive Trumpism.
Her life is a charmed life. She has great control over who she is and what she wants to be. And I believe that the best is definitely yet to come for Ivana.